decent cover with Cliffy, who comes back, and Gus Waugh's been looking really good, and a young lad called Nye Thomas, an 18-year-old who's like another Rafi, another Faf in the making. The guy's electric. I'm not sure about his game management at the moment, but you give him a ball a bit of space, it'll surprise a few people. And over the autumn internationals, that's 2 games of the Premiership Cup. So we want to air these young lads anyway. So there's no need for someone in the short term. If Rafi does what we all expect him to do, then we might have to reconsider that come the Six Nations. But that's a few months off. So,
do you expect Faf to be out till then?
Well, yes. I think he's getting operated on right now. So,
and when you say reconsider, you mean short-term signings sort of deal? Yeah. AJ and Lou ready to go?
No, not yet. So,
neither of them.
Well, we're still waiting on AJ. He's been to see a lung specialist today, and he's got some bruising on his lungs, which is a really weird injury, which, and as such, doesn't have a definite return to play date. It's as and when that fluid gets reabsorbed. So it might be this week. He has trained the last 2 days, but we haven't pushed him into red zone or, he's blown out of his arse. So we'll find that out on Thursday. That's our tough session, and if he can do everything then brilliant. We'll give him
after they got beaten by them at the weekend, Worcester, a couple of the guys from Worcester said that Leicester are starting to play like a test match team. That's the feeling of getting squeezed that they're getting by playing against them. Can you talk a little bit about the progress you've seen from them, and maybe as Steve Borthwick, somebody that I imagine you know fairly well, what his impact, how you viewed that?
Well, statistically speaking, and you can dig these stats up anywhere, but they kick the most, they play pretty much the least phases, and they have pretty much the highest territory gain. Second highest, but we'll just say highest. So their ability to squeeze teams and play in the right areas to play the territory game is the one factor that dictates the win-loss ratio of Test match rugby. It does. It's not how much ball you have, it's where you play the game. So they've got that down to a T, I think. And they've been developing that for the last year. Both's very much probables over possibles, and, it's a kind of old Saracens philosophy, but he's very good, very smart at it, highly analytical. So he plays the percentages. On the back of that, because he had that last year, he's now got a power game to back it up. So when he is in those right areas, they've got the best maul in the league. They've scored every game. And that features very highly, like roughly 2/3 of their starting launches are off a maul. So you've got to be able to negate that. And then you've got Genge, Nadalo, Van Straten, Visa, Martin. The list goes on. So you've got to be able to at least get parity, or at least get some field position. You've got to disrupt them all, and you've got to handle some of their big ball carriers. And if you don't do any one of those things, you're probably going to fall short.
I've got one more. The Vunipola brothers are a pair of guys that you've won huge games with. You've seen the way they've developed and everything like that. What have you made of their international setback, the way they're out the mix at the minute with England, and what does it mean for the rest of the Premiership?
Trouble. It's great. It's great seeing them in the Premiership. It's terrible for them personally. I'm sure they'll be gutted, because they're very driven and ambitious lads, and I'm sure that they still are. I'm sure they'll be highly motivated, because they had a great game, didn't they? They had a brilliant game. I watched it on Sunday, and I was really impressed with them. Seeing them back to, because I guess the only thing you could question about two guys who have had that much time at that level of rugby is the drive. Do they still want to be there? Are they still motivated? And I think Sunday showed that they are. So, but not but anything. I can only assume that Eddie knows what they bring. He knows them. He's had them in camp for years. And potentially, because I haven't spoken to Eddie, but potentially he's looking at other personnel that could give him something a bit different, knowing that he could, if he hasn't lost them, which I'm sure he hasn't, he could always go back to the likes of Mako and Billy and fill a hole or fill a gap there, which potentially them not being there would highlight. So it's brilliant. They're going to be in the Prem. It's going to be tough for every other team. Like I say, it's only 3 weeks. The Six Nations is the big one where you need your players, you need some good players. You can make some ground up if you don't have that too many international players. And I'm sure they'll be chomping at the bit and trying to prove Eddie wrong, which maybe is what Eddie's trying to do as well. You just don't know, do you? Who can guess the mind of Eddie Jones? I know you. No, I can't. I'm sure you guys can't. You must have tried in the past.
You'd back them then, knowing the way you do them. You'd back them, and seeing them having come over setbacks previously, you'd back them to come back pretty strong.
Without a shadow of a doubt. Because I did say they're highly driven and highly motivated and ambitious, but the two things come before the latter. They're always driven. They're always motivated, and they've got they're a bit of a glue to that organisation, the pair of them, for different reasons. Because Mako's the bit of a dour, grumpy granddad. Like, he takes on his dad's persona, Theo. And Billy couldn't be more about the lads and joviality and fun and laughter and feel, whereas Mako wants to push the process. And I'm speaking in general terms here, but Billy's the one who wants the hugs and the smiles. So together, they make up a lot of the fabric of that team. They're not going to lose that, just because they've been dropped. They've still got that to fall back on and to motivate them, inspire them. Which is one of the strengths that the Saracens have, isn't it? Yeah. Right, cheers, Charlie. I can't hear you there, Chris. Sorry, mate.
Give me the other microphone in. How's that?
Better. Better from you.
Alex,
first rodeo either. You've been drinking, Chris. It's been afternoon rosé or something.
Not yet. Look, can you just take us through? The last time we spoke to you, you were waiting on results of scans for Faf. The scans are obviously not great. Was he given options, and was surgery the obvious option? And therefore, what now happens in terms of rehab time, etc.?
We had trouble getting the scans back from Australia for obvious reasons. It's 10,000 miles away. But we did get the radiologist's report, or at least Faris Haddad did, who's the world-renowned specialist in this kind of surgery down in London. He does all the footballers. I think he did Ronaldo. So there you go. Pick that name up off the floor. So when it comes to that level, that high level of expertise, they don't really give you options. I mean, right. You know what I mean? It's like, yes, it needs an operation. No, it doesn't. You take his advice as gospel. But yeah, it needs an operation. So. And
is it a hip muscle injury, or is it something structural? The reason I ask is because the other sport I do is tennis, and hips have been very much part of our lives for the last couple of years with Andy.
It is a ligament. From what I understand from the radiologist report, and I haven't seen the scan, so I could be wrong, but there's two ligaments that join to your hip flexor, and one of them's torn. Not through completely, but it's on its last tendrils. And so that needs to be reconnected so he's able to function properly, because otherwise it would ultimately tear through, and the other one would have too much strain on it to play the game. So it needs it redoing.
Because is it 5 months? Is correct? The suggested length of time. That's a long one, isn't it? That's like an ACL reconstruction type of thing.
I think it's a bit less than that. I'm hoping it's a bit less than that.
Right. Okay.
I mean, 4 maybe, yeah. But he's a quick healer, Faf. He's only got little legs, so there's not a lot to heal. You got to stay cheerful through it. I'm not happy about it, but what can you do?
And in terms of Faf's mental state. He obviously, it's a massive blow to him because he's going to miss so much, both internationally and club-wise. But as a personality, could you be a better personality to bounce back from something like this?
Oh, he's very positive, isn't he? Optimism's a virtue of his. He's brought his girlfriend back home from South Africa, so that'll keep him positive for a month or two. That was important, that, to be fair, because he needed looking after, and especially while you're rehabbing, you need someone around just to give you a cuddle and make you a cup of tea, and he's got that now. So I'm happy for him in his personal life. But yeah, if anyone's going to come back from an injury like this, as strong, as motivated, it's going to be him, because he's got seemingly limitless energy, hasn't he?
And just finally from me on this, knee reconstructions, hamstrings, ankles, the S&C guys know about this. They've been through the rehabs endless times with various players. This sounds something very different. Is it going to be more challenging?
They're very experienced. I'm sure they'll get the best advice. Well, they will get the best. I'll make sure they get the best advice as to what the rehabilitation program is. Marlon Yard's had it done.
Same thing.
Yeah. Years ago, when he was 18 and he played for England. You can play through these things, but not for a long period of time. And he's looking sharper now after that and a reconstruction than he's looked for a long time. So yeah, it is possible, more than possible, to come back even years on.
Excellent. Thanks, Ray.
Cheers, Chris.
Yeah, hi, Alex. Just want to ask you, he did this injury when he was away with the South Africans playing the Lions, didn't he? Then it progressively got worse. Yeah, is that right?
From my understanding, my very limited knowledge of anatomy, yes, that's what I've been informed, but we haven't had our own scans done to compare against the old scans, so I can't confirm.
Right. Should they have taken better care of him? Yeah, but he's got that injury, but he continued to play on, and now you're paying the penalty for it.
Well, it's easy in hindsight, isn't it, to say yes, they should have, but I'm sure, like I said last week, that there's no organisation goes out there to deliberately injure a player, or I assume at that level to be that negligent. So I don't believe that. I can't believe that they mistreated him deliberately.
But do you think his bravery played a part in it?
Always, you've got to take it off the player. Any player in an international tournament who feels like they can play on, and I'm sure he did feel like he could play, would play. So it's got to be a medical. It's got to be a medical decision to take it away from the player.
And do they have to be braver, do you think? Yeah, the medical people. Because you're paying the penalty for this now. You're without one of your best players, if not your best player, for 4 or 5 months, and you're picking up the tab for the wages.
They're picking up the tab, but that's,
Really?
They have to, yeah, they're insured. Yeah. But
yeah, let's hope they are.
Yeah. Look, you can sit. Look, geez, like people get injured all the time, and South Africa was pissed off with us injuring Lude, for instance, which wasn't intentional, but he did get injured, broke his knee, broke his ankle, and he was late to the Lions test, late into camp. So, yeah, you can nitpick on any one of these and start pointing fingers. I'm not going to do that, because you end up being quite a bitter old man, I imagine. It's part of the game.
Okay, and also you mentioned that you're not going to look for a replacement 9 now. Has that got anything to do with the argument between agents and clubs?
No.
What do you make of that, Ray?
No, I mean, it's got more to do with me having faith for the lads we've got, and it might be naive, blind faith, because they haven't been proven, these lads, really, at this level against the best teams. So I might have to eat my words in a month's time, but right now they need my backing and support. They've got it.
What do you make to this row between agents and clubs, and is it making your planning difficult?
It makes it more difficult for succession planning and contract negotiations, yeah. It does. I can understand both arguments. A lot of the players, established players particularly, end up agreeing the terms in their own contracts, and there's no need for an agent. So why would you pay him whatever it is, 5-10%, and it's an extra added cost? But outside the Premiership, everyone's paying agents' fees, so that cost has to then only be added on top of the existing monies that you're offering the player anyway. So it ends up getting paid in a roundabout way. I'm sure there'll be some kind of compromise sought and agreed upon down the line. But at the moment, there's, as you know, there's a bit of gesturing and
posturing, and
yeah, and not enough talking, not enough conversations going. Yeah, exactly that. Part of my role here is to coach the rugby. And I've said time and time again, I don't want to be involved in the monetary side. It's the devil, isn't it, Cash? It really is. When you start talking about money to players, you take away the human element, and it becomes much more of a chat about almost like a commodity, and it breaks me that a bit. I can't look at players as numbers, but I have to understand that that's part of my role as well moving forward, to fit into the salary cap, to fit into the overall plan. But for most of the negotiations, I leave that to Sid Sutton and the CEO. So I'm quite happily able to step away as much as I can.
Yeah, is that the worst part of the job that you've found since being becoming a director of rugby, stroke head coach, or whatever your title is, that you've got to look at things like that, things that you didn't previously? Yeah, well, Eddie Jones made a good analogy yesterday, where as an assistant coach comes up with ideas and then he goes home and has a cup of tea, and it's up to the director of rugby and head coach to implement it. Do you find that was the part of what you don't like doing?
You go back to what you know and what you're used to. For me, that's on the field coaching. I think I've said this before. It's on the field in a tracksuit with the lads and a lot of interaction, and I'm not getting as much as that, so I miss that because I have to focus on the direction as a club as a whole, and that's so part of it's succession, part of it's dealing with agents, part of it is understanding when you're talking about the money you've got to spend, where players' lives fit into that. Because they are live. You're talking about people's lives here, and I really struggle with that. The other bit is being in the moment for the performance of the week, and then having to step back and have a look at the big picture, and to compartmentalise the week and look back at the big picture, and then to show the big picture and to focus on the week. I've struggled with a bit of that when I can just be totally immersed in what's needed for the weekend. So struggle a bit of that. And I guess, yeah, the other one is just finding time for my family, and I haven't got the balance right yet, but it's going to probably take me a while.
Do you find yourself going home and you're still thinking about a contract and this kind of stuff? And
yeah, talk to my missus about it. She's a great soundboard, and then I've said it and I feel better, but it's. You get into 8:30, 9 o'clock at night, and you're like, my kid's saying, why don't you have a day off, Dad? He's 5. I think he's heard me say it. That's why he's repeating it, to be fair. But my IAD, amongst all of this, I'm loving it. I am absolutely loving the job. I'm loving the workload. I'm loving with the boys. I'm loving the fact we're growing something and I've got a bigger influence. All of that I'm loving. So I'm not complaining. It's just, I think part of it's nature of the job and understanding how much you can do over, because it's not sustainable for a lot of coaches, how much you can do over a sustained period, so you don't lose some of your joy of it. That's the key.
And we do admire coaches that can just churn it out each and every day, because there are some that actually live it, aren't there? There are some that, well, I guess Eddie Jones gets up at 4:30 in the morning and he's probably still going at midnight.
Yeah. No, you all have to live it. You have to live it. You have to, because there's no way around it. Even if you manage your time well enough, and this is an assistant coach, you get a day off a week if you manage your time. You know, if you're a Paul Deacon or Mike Forshaw. And they're all in here. Every one of them's in here. At 6-ish, half 6-ish, doing a session because I ain't got time in the day. But that's our little time to bond. But yeah, I asked him, I went out, he took me out for a meal. Nice of him, because he came up and I hadn't caught up with him for a while. And we had a chat about, he's like, what keeps you up at night? And for me, I'm like, it's the next day. Like I need to know that I'm doing everything I can for that next day, because I'm still trying to find my feet and prove it to myself that I can do this job. And I know I'm 7 months in. And I'm like, what about you? You've been doing it for 30 years, Eddie. Like, what keeps you driven? What keeps you going to the intensity that you do? What keeps you up at night? And he quoted Nigel Ray of all people, which is quite apt, I guess, isn't it? Because he got on with Nigel, and Nigel's worth however much he's worth. But he could have retired 30 years ago, couldn't he? Could have.
Yeah. And
he doesn't, because he's still super driven. And it's like, what drives you? And he goes, I wake up every day and I convince myself that I'm bankrupt. And that's a good way to look at it. Because every day he needs to go out and set and make a fortune. And as a coach, it's probably the same thing. Like, you probably need to go out. And for me, like last week's done now, isn't it? Quins is done. And you're only as good as your last game. But as a coach, your games are your sessions, are your presentations, are your interactions with the boys. So do you get, was I as good today as I was this time last week in prep for Quins? And I'm questioning myself on that. As the lads talk about having a similar kind of intensity. Well, what's my intensity? What's my focus like? So you've got to have that same focus as a coach every day to come in and not do better, because you can't improve all the time, but certainly to come in and apply yourself as well as you did the day before.
Because you seem quite a chilled out guy, somebody who likes having a laugh. We've seen that. So how do you take Friday's result, or a result like Friday, and how does that affect the family?
Well, I won't lie to you, we needed it. I'd made some brave calls in rotation and probably some wrong calls in the weeks before that jeopardised the consistency of the team. To rest people, to rotate people with a long view, with a long-term view. You know who those guys are, because you mentioned them, Tom and Manu, a few of them. So for them to come in, and it was pretty much as a scratch team and perform with the intent they had. Like, it's like, well, no, we're in a good place here. We are in a good place. And I've been telling myself that the environment's been good, the feeling's been good, the coaching for the most part's been good. Lost a little bit of detail. And it's going to come together. It will come. And it did on Friday. So that rather than an elation and a euphoria, which I've said before is lasting, there was a contentment there to know that if you just keep sticking, doing the right thing, and you know you're doing the right thing, that at some point it's going to turn. And it kind of did on Friday for all the right reasons. It was good timing against a really good team, and they were really good. You got to give them credit. We dominated in a lot of areas, but it was still a 1-point game with kind of 10 minutes to go, wasn't it? So, but I said to myself, 6 minutes to go, and it's still a 1-point game. We were losing. I'm like, right, if we lose this, I'm happy. I was saying to myself, it doesn't matter, because we had a brilliant performance and we missed 3 or 4 kicks and we probably should have won. You know, we've given them a couple of soft tries, and I'm happy, regardless of how this goes, because we've shown what we're about. We've shown what we can do. We've shown there's a different style of play in the game as opposed to this end-to-end stuff that was all hyped about the Bristol Quins match. That there's many ways to win a rugby game, and we've put ourselves out there in terms of what our identity is. So I was really happy just with the performance, regardless of the result. And then I went home and I drank 2 bottles of red wine and I danced around my kitchen table with my wife until 2 o'clock in the morning. So the whole family was happy. I had my dad up, who's got dementia, and he ain't going to come to many games more, if I'm honest. So that's a memory that is going to last with him probably till his end of days. So stuff like that, all of that, you know, like I said, living it, loving it, it makes it all worthwhile. The long days and the couple of hard losses we've had to get a performance like that with all the people you love around you makes it quite special.
Okay, mate. Yeah, no, that's brilliant. I don't want to bore anybody else who wants to get a question in.
I'm boring you guys. I'm going on. You didn't even ask me.
No, mate.
Great. Out.
Great stuff.
All right. Cheers, Neil.
Cheers, mate.
Alex, here at Rugby Pass.
You all right?
All good, yeah, all good there. Just with regard to Faf, is the plan for him to have the surgery there in the UK? Is that it? Yeah.
Yeah.
So he's not going to head back to South Africa for any part of the recuperation. He's with you guys now until he gets back playing. Yeah.
That was part of the plan. But you missed the point out that he's brought his girlfriend back home.
Yeah,
that extra week to get her a visa and a passport so he could do his rehab back here. Yeah.
Okay, fair enough. And I'm just wondering, when you went to speak to him, was there any awkwardness on his part, the fact that he's come back to you injured? You know what I'm saying?
No.
So, you know how much he loves playing for Sale, etc. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And how much surely there's a level of frustration there within him that he can't play for the club now, that he has been injured while playing for the Springboks, etc.
Yeah, no, like Jesus, I retired from injury. Like you carry that guilt around with you, not from us, maybe from him. You know, of course he's got it coming back injured, but I don't see it as being his fault at all. You know.
Okay, no. I just wondering what he was feeling. That's grand. Look, I'm just wondering there. You work with Steve Diamond some there as your media guy.
Yeah.
He's been away from Sale now for the guts of a year, nearly 9 months at least. There was a rumor that he could be possibly back in rugby. He might give back the ticket. I'm just wondering, have you come across him on your day-to-day dealings with Leicester? And if you have, what have you talked about? What's he been like, etc. You know.
Right. So I didn't see him for 4 or 5 months. He still lives in the locality. He still drinks with Pete Anglesey. He still talks to the coaches. But obviously, you know, when you leave a place, you have to make that separation. And he was on a bit of garden leave, I guess, like he was going to Ibiza and all that. I hadn't seen him for a while. And I got myself a member. The club got me a membership for the Mia Country Club. It's very posh. It's very upper middle class. Because it's got a swimming pool. All right, and my lad hasn't been swimming because of COVID and stuff for 2 years. He's only 4 or 5, so it's got a really nice swimming pool. There's no plasters in it. Mooching around. There's a little bit to look at in terms of like Cheshire set, housewives. So it's got it all there. It's got a spa, and I'm in there like bobbing away with my lad who's just drowning. Basically, I'm just stopping him from drowning in my trunks, and in walks Steve Diamond in his trunks with his 5-year-old daughter Evie. So this is the first time I've seen him. You know, you can't be any more stripped bare, can you? Literally and metaphorically. So he gets into the pool and we have a good chat. And I wasn't sure. Like I've always found Dimes. It's always been brilliant to me. He signed me up when I came here. You know all the story. So, but to have a man-to-man, bare-chested conversation in the swimming pool in our trunks really broke the ice, I guess. So we talked about the team he'd built, and it was always kind of on the cards for me to come down and him still be here. You know, we talked once or twice in the past about the role shift that he would have and then I'd come and take over the rugby. There was no ill feelings. He wanted only the best for the club. There was no envy or jealousy there. The fact that we were doing well at that point in time either, and we were kicking on because he actually believed that that's what we needed anyway, moving forward. And we talked about his prospects getting back into the game, of which, you know, Bath was just the most recent one, but there's been others. San Diego was one, and you know he's got prospective backers to take over clubs who potentially come into some kind of financial trouble on the back of the COVID. So, he's always got fingers in pies, hasn't he? He's always got something on the go, Dimes, and there is no animosity. In fact, I'm looking. There's a surprise birthday happening, so don't tell him. Don't put this in. But I'm going to see him in a couple of weeks' time for a beer. I'm looking forward to it.
Okay, he struck you still having his enthusiasm being renewed for the game, and he just want to get back. Did he? What was that? Was that the way he was talking?
Yeah. I think he's still got a lot to offer, and from what I can't speak for them because I haven't seen him for a few weeks. But he was motivated a few months ago, so I assume he's even more so now in terms of getting back into. I think he was banded around, but doing the referee's job as well. Did you hear that? Can you imagine? Well, not that he'd do a bad job, but just his relationship with the referees, it's poacher turned gamekeeper. So yeah, there's been loads of rumours about what he could be doing. And yeah, rugby's on the horizon. They're not too distant horizon. They're not too distant horizon for Steve Diamond. I think he'll be back in the game at some point soon.
Okay, that's good to hear. Just finally for me, Tom Curry on Friday night, I think it was 4 turnovers won. You were in double figures with regard to turnovers win. Is that just Tom being Tom, or is there something going on there at the breakdown in recent weeks that has made the possibility of winning turnovers in these matches a bit easier? Is there some refereeing trend going on there?
I think he was good for 7 or 8, Liam. Honestly, if you look back at the game, there was loads that he should have got. I think, well, certainly the way that Quins play, this expansive style of rugby, where they're looking to offload the ball, they're looking to get through the tackle. It opens you up for that jackal threat, for that turnover threat, because you land long and you land at the feet of an inside defender who's coming round to the ruck. So it's perfect. It's a perfect scenario for Tom. And we actually spoke about him not looking for it, because the flip side of that, you put your head in a midfield ruck against the Quins, Smith's got you second phase, got you the phase after that. So we're like, look, just let him come to you. And he did, and his decision making was brilliant. But yeah, there's that, and obviously looking after the jackler a little bit more. That's the directive, wasn't it? Not targeting lower limbs. It means they have to come through the gate a little bit squarer. So that potentially could buy you an extra time. But I just think there's a penchant, or at least a shift in most teams, and you can see that in the score lines. I think there's only one team that hasn't scored over 20 points, to attack more in the right areas off the right ball. And what this kicking game gives you to some degree in the 50-22s is unstructured possession, and that's what Quins talked about. So you attack more off unstructured possession, which means you're more dangerous, but you're also more vulnerable if you do get isolated, which opens up for the jackal threat. So there's a few things there. Style of play, the directives coming in, and the shift in focus, or the shift in playing styles of teams perhaps playing a little bit more expansively when it's on.
Okay, and just finally with Tom, is he any way different in terms of the character and personality and the influence he wields on the squad now that he's become a line over the summer? Has he changed from the Tom Curry you would have known, say, in June before he headed off to South Africa?
He's back with his ex-girlfriend, so deem that what you will. He's everything. He's a little bit more intense. He's probably he's definitely more mature in how he speaks. And that's probably the life cycle of any player. Like, you end up leading by example at the start, just getting your feet under the table, and as you grow and mature, then you become a little bit more, what's the word, eloquent in terms of how you're able to verbalise what you do, and he's there right now, and he's got a really good feel on the, because he's a very intense player, Tom. He wants everything high tempo, high energy, and intense. So I say he's got a good feel in it, but most of the time it's a feel on where it sits within his own standards, which is a difficult thing to drive. So, like, take yesterday, which was a bit of an install day. It was a lower pace day. Like, we're only going up to 70%, and he's like, we're not where we need to be. This is not as intense as we need to be, and by that, because we dropped 3 or 4 balls, you know what I mean. So he's driving those standards, but he doesn't do it in a nasty way. He doesn't do it in a ways which people are afraid of. He says it in a way where people are right. Well, if that's what Tom's saying, then it must be right. We'll follow it. So he has become a better leader on the back of the lines, a more self-assured, more mature player. To answer your question.
Great stuff, Alex. You've been brilliant. It's smashing inside again. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Liam. Cheers, mate. We're good there, lads.
Thanks, Al.
Cheers, boys. See you again.